Sean.
Marco.
We are here to deliver a message from the RSA conference team.
It's an important message from our friends. RSA Conference 2025, just around the corner, where insights drive action, solutions emerge, and community connections spark innovation. You'll be there. I'll be there. We invite everybody else to be there April 28th through May 1st. You can secure your spot at rsaconference.com/ITSPmag25. That's ITSPmag25. See you all there.
I'll be there. See you there.
Marco.
Sean.
It's story time.
I know. It's my favorite time of the year. Well, of the day, because lately we do stories every day.
We do many stories all the time. But they're super fun. And you know what I like about this particular type of story?
Tell me.
I'll tell you, because you're not going to be able to guess. Well, I've always wanted to be an analyst. So I pretend to be an analyst because I like to look at...
You play one on podcast.
I like data. I like to analyze data. I like to look at trends and kind of see where things are going. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, the Threat Trends Report from LevelBlue. So I'm super excited for this.
Very good. And we have Ken
Ng from LevelBlue, who I guess has a bit of a hand in putting this report together.
I did. So hi, my name is Ken. I'm here with LevelBlue. I'm a threat hunter and one of the lead IR folks on our managed detection and response team. So LevelBlue, we're a managed security service provider. We do cybersecurity consulting, and we also have a threat intelligence team alongside our 24/7, 365 SOC. Basically, we saw that we had a lot of data from our years of work, from both threat hunting, from all the incidents we help out on, and then obviously from our SOC. And then working hand in hand with our LevelBlue Labs team, and they do kind of threat analysis, threat hunter tracking, all the really cool stuff on the back end versus like us being more tactical boots on the ground. We just sat down and like, hey, we need to come up with a report. We need to be thought leaders in the field. And we hammered out a first edition of our 2024 second half of the year report, the Threat Trends Report.
So I'm gonna start here, maybe a little technical, but I think it's interesting because threat intelligence, threat hunting, security operations, managed detection and response, lots of different types of data, right? Some of it looks the same, repetitive. Others, you're trying to make sense of something that might be an anomaly sitting hidden within another data set. How do you and the teams look at all of this to kind of figure out, well, what do we collect? How do we normalize it? How do we bring it all together?
Yeah, I think when we go through our incidents, we start that as our starting point, right? We see many incidents per day, and we drill down to, hey, what are the types of incidents we're seeing, and how does this align with the findings of the labs team? So I think a good example from this of the report is the labs team started doing a lot of threat actor analysis on Phishing-as-a-Service kits, in this case, Raccoon 365. And this is just one of many. This is a drop in a bucket of all the many new Phishing-as-a-Service kits that we're seeing come up and that is affecting our customer base. So we see that as a trend, both in our SOC metrics and as threat hunters, as we're hunting through, hey, what Phishing-as-a-Service kits are we seeing across the data sources? What are our SOC seeing, helping customers out with, and how does this align with what the labs team is seeing on the dark web and threat actor analysis? So we're taking these pieces of, hey, what aligns? And in this case, this led to kind of three kind of key points in our report, which is essentially phishing is up. Phishing is up big time. And number two is malware is up big time. And number three, ransomware actors are working faster and they're getting deeper within environments.
So many good news.
Right? Loads of good news there. Well, we'll dig into each of those. Before there's the inaugural version of this. Is there an objective beyond just we have a bunch of data, we're going to see what it says. Is there an objective to, I guess, how do LevelBlue customers take advantage of what you have put together here? What's the goal?
Yeah, I think it's beyond just, we're not just throwing a whole bunch of numbers and data points. That's not the point of the report, at least in not the sections I wrote. We wanted to make sure that there are actionable pieces in the report that a customer, or even just anyone else that's not a customer who potentially could be looking for, hey, what are some recommendations or changes we can make to be more secure, to have more secure defense in depth within our organization. So we made sure for each of those three pieces, those three highlights, that we also have recommendations. Hey, how do we defend against phishing? How do we defend against malware attacks? And in the scope of ransomware actors, like how can we make the right changes within our environment? How can we detect the threat actors? And then when a incident does happen, how to remove the threat actors from the environment, the containment and remediation piece.
Yeah, and I want to add to that I am already aware, and I'm not going to just spill the beans, that you're already planning for a part 2, the revenge of the threat report. So obviously it's becoming core for LevelBlue to be something that you're going to leverage moving forward and definitely bring benefit to your clients.
Exactly. We want to be a thought leader in this space. We don't want to simply just have data. We want to help our customers. We want to help all the other vendors and partnerships that we have, and potential partners and vendors that want to work with LevelBlue. We want to show that, hey, we are not afraid to go in the weeds, to discuss in this level of detail what we're seeing, but also how we're detecting, how we're helping our customers. And this just makes the field as a whole stronger and better and more cohesive.
All right, so let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
Let's start. Number 1.
Raccoon. Number 1.
Yeah. I mean, not the hypothesis, but the thesis statement here is that phishing is up. And why is phishing up, right? Phishing has always been around for, the genesis of cybersecurity. And I think the big finding here is that email account takeover attacks are becoming very easy for threat actors to perform. You have a zero knowledge threat actor who can just simply buy a kit. In this case, in our report, we discussed Raccoon 365, but there's also other kits that we've been seeing: Mamba 2FA, Tycoon, Greatness. All these are readily available and cheap. All you need to do is just give them a credit card, some crypto, boom. You have the backend infrastructure, you have the phishing kit itself. You just put in the targets, you click send, it creates the emails, it sends the emails to your victims. And from there, these kits are relatively simple, right? You have a fake invoice, you have a fake, hey, we just shared this file with you. We're seeing, previously everyone's talking about 2FA for protections against these account takeover accounts, attacks from phishing. And the problem is all these kits now incorporate a 2FA proxy, where it proxies your connection to the Microsoft backend. You put in your MFA credentials and you get a session token, but the attacker gets a session token, and then the attacker then uses the session token to get into your environment. So this
you're not actually, your session token is not actually being used by you. You're handing it off to the
attacker, and then they're using it to get into your environment. And there's also a lot of, I guess, gaps in security, what we see across both customers and what's being discussed by other vendors, right? A good example is app consent. As an end user, you're able to consent to apps to be added to your O365 account. So we're seeing threat actors leverage apps that let you very quickly exfil out your entire mailbox, or to jump into SharePoint and pull out as many files as they want right out of SharePoint. So then this becomes a problem because it's downstream attacks now you're worried about. This is where email account takeover attacks lead to business email compromise. And this is where you have ACH scams. This is where you have downstream attacks where your O365 credentials or your Azure AD credentials that come in through the VPN. So now you're not just looking at a phishing attack that led to a email compromise. You're looking at a phishing attack that led to potentially full enterprise compromise through a ransomware actor.
So many questions on this first point, because obviously there's the entry into the organization through a system or a device or an end user clicking on something, and there's the detection of that, and then there's the other stuff you're talking about, which is now the there's a compromise, right? And lateral movement and installation of additional things can take place. Are there signs of those activities that can be identified and used to block? And if not, how do organizations deal with the after effect of a compromise if that is indeed successful in terms of like response and recovery and things like that?
Sure, that's a very multifaceted question, Sean. But
I like to do that, by the way.
we're hitting many different pieces of it, right? Just talking about the phishing aspect, right? The first piece of that is to have a strong email gateway, right? That will filter out a lot of the phishing emails that come in, kind of stop the attack before you even get to the downstream user compromise. It's talking about having good conditional access within your O365. It's talking about the app consent, having only admins allow for consenting of apps. It's talking about having the logs come to a SIM, right? So that, organizations such as LevelBlue can then analyze and say, hey, we have the telemetry, we have the rules that detect the attacker activity. Very common attacker activity when they enter a mailbox is to create a mailbox rule, right? So it's do you have the logs to even detect that in the first place? Do you have the teams to do that? So that's the first piece of it. Second piece of it is, do you have someone looking at the logins, right? So you have a suspicious or anomalous login from most likely a IP address that's not from your normal users. So do you have the tools to detect those anomalies, whether that be machine learning or just hard TTPs analysis of, hey, this usually comes in from an American IP address, and all of a sudden we're seeing a Russian IP address. So that's sort of the first piece of the puzzle, that phishing, assuming that's the first intrusion method. And we referenced this in the report, but phishing is just one small piece of the intrusion puzzle, right? We also have the discussion of malware. We have the discussion of exploitation of devices in the DMZ. Most of the time, this is the VPN concentrator. This is the firewall entry point, or this could even be a FTP box that's readily accessible. And we saw that recently with Crush FTP. So really, sure, Marco.
No, I was just thinking, like, when you gave the three main point, and you gave the good news, malware, ransomware, and phishing, they're all up. And I'm thinking, like, they're probably the same reason, right? I mean, automation, malware as a service, and all of that, and it's kind of like more of deciding, which tool am I gonna get in this nice bag that I can purchase, even if I don't know anything about hacking.
Right, and it's kind of unfortunate, right? There's no one tool that captures all of these, right? Both the phishing piece, the ransomware piece, or extringently the malware piece. And it's about having the right partnerships and vendors in place. So, speaking as a LevelBlue employee, obviously we do that full suite. We do partnerships with SentinelOne for EDR. We do the email analysis. We have our 24/7 SOC. But speaking as a security practitioner, generally, you want to choose a vendor and a partner that aligns with your business needs and budget and all of that.
And one thing, Ken, if I can, because when we look at response in particular, it's often the time between compromise and recovery, right? Or at least blocking, or stopping the spread and then ultimately recovery.
Right.
It sounds like the bad actors are orchestrating, using these tools, a lot of the tactics and techniques, and automating a lot of that stuff. So those times are just super fast now, making it even more difficult for response teams to close that gap of compromise to damage. Is that the case? Are there data points supporting that, and how do organizations kind of handle that scenario?
Yeah, so across the ransomware incidents I've worked in the last couple of months, we're seeing breakout time. So from time of compromise to lateral movement, that used to be within days. We're now seeing that within an hour. So sub 1 hour intrusion, whether through what we discussed, through phishing, through malware, through exploiting the DMZ, or through what we often see is the fake IT support where they call in, get a user on Teams, and then they'll use, hey, open Quick Assist, which is pre-installed on all your hosts. From that intrusion point, it's sub 1 hour to laterally move. And 9 times out of 10, they're moving onto a server that usually contains other administrative credentials, and that leads to full domain pop. So threat actors are doing this very quickly, right? They're using some level of scripting, automation. They run their scripts. In the case of one case study we've done, the customer, they had a user fall for the tech support scam. User opened the file that was sent to them through the app. And from there, everything was automated from both the execution, the DLL side loading that allowed for the escalation of privileges on the DLL, and then the brute forcing and SMB attacks to get additional administrator credentials. So all that we saw within 10 minutes tops with scripts that didn't have any mistakes. It was just blast, blast, blast. And we see this in our SIM. So we know that piece of it is definitely automated and scripted. They have it down to a T. And really the defensive measures there is to not have your users fall for phishing, not have your users fall for the Microsoft Teams attacks, right? So that's where you have to really figure out your threat surface, right? If you're using Microsoft Teams, do you have external domains able to reach in, right? Do you have a whitelist approach that only allows trusted domains to come in? If your major intrusion point is users running malware, downloading software, are you using whitelisting of applications? Are you using tools like AppLocker to not allow certain executions of files, right? Threat actors often rely on the same kind of files across their attacks. This is reconnaissance tools like NetScan, Angry IP Scanner. We see them use the same kind of tools for enumeration, right? So does the end user need access to these tools? And 9 times out of 10, it's no. It's your admin users that really need these tools. Another example is RMM tools. Well, you're likely just going to be using one RMM, so remote management and monitoring tool. So this could be your Screen Connect. This could be your Team Viewer. Well, threat actors are dropping 2, 3, 4 RMM tools to keep persistence on your servers, on your end user workstations that they pop. And this is another case where, hey, you can preemptively block those RMM tools and their API endpoints, so the domains that they need access to actually for the program to actually run. So by taking that preemptive step, you're making it much more difficult for a threat actor to do their job of A, compromising users, but B, laterally moving across the environment.
Yeah,
and I guess
they're automating the reconnaissance and then using the results of that to script out the actions and the movement itself. Yeah.
The movement itself is a bit manual, right? You need to be able to, hey, I now have these creds to then do this on the domain controller. But a lot of the spread, we do see, hey, this could be scripted, right? They're just using WinRM, they're using PsExec to just beam a installer. 9 times, like I said, it's the RMM tool. You beam it on the domain controller. Now you have a remote desktop tool on your domain controller, and your domain controller, even if for the most part you have the network controls pretty down pat, you allow 443 out. It needs to pull Windows updates, right? Bam. That's all it needs for them to get back in on that remote access tool on your domain controller.
What's the situation in, like, I'm always fascinated by the never-ending fight between good and evil, right? So something innovates on the defense side, something innovates on the offensive side, and so on. So in this scenario, there is a lot that can be done preventing this from happening. But do we have technologies that are fighting automatically without against the automation of the attacker?
That's a good question. It's not something I have seen. I know it's something our LevelBlue Labs team is kind of working on using, generative AI and machine
Yeah.
learning to better detect that activity. That's something we are trying to get ahead of. But I think just speaking as a practitioner, just speaking as myself, it's a tough fight.
Right. Yeah.
And in terms of malware, because that's kind of the second block of stuff we've kind of talked in and around this, but any highlights from there that you want to point to, and what did some of those results mean to organizations trying to defend themselves?
Yeah, sure. So on our 2024, which is what the trends report covered, we saw a lot of Cobalt Strike, and that's a given. That's a very readily available tool for threat actors. But I think for me, more interesting was the uptick in both fake updates. This is where you usually visit a compromised site. It runs some JavaScript that says, "Hey, you're running an out-of-date Chrome. Please download this file." And users end up downloading a zip file, and inside that is a JavaScript file. I think this comes down to poor control in GPO, where you're just letting willy-nilly users double-click on executable script files, and it just runs for end users. The best defense against this is to use GPO to set, hey, WSF files, JavaScript files that end users have no business running, have that open in Notepad. Makes it completely useless as a threat vector. And the second attack we're seeing a lot of, it's Luma Stealer. It's also referenced in the report, but just in the last week, we had 7 Luma detections. And this is where you'll visit a website or you'll open a document and it says, hey, your browser is wonky. Please copy and paste this code. So on the website, you click the copy button. It uses JavaScript to put stuff into your clipboard. You paste it. It says all it does is I am a human. But really, you copied a bunch of PowerShell that's now going to pull down additional files, plus the cute little I'm not a robot. So we've seen 7 of these in the past week. Users are prone to fall for it, right? It looks like it could be a CAPTCHA. It looks has pictures to it. It looks fancy. It sounds legit. And I think this one is easy enough. You just don't allow users to run PowerShell unless they're a power user. Don't let them open command prompt. You still need command prompt in the back end to run updates and controls for your user workstations, but at the end users themselves under their account should not be able to open a command prompt, paste in commands, and then get compromised in that way. So that's a really good finding we've had both last year and this year.
So for group policy, you've mentioned this a few times, GPO, group policy orchestrator. Is that something organizations aren't using, I'll say, well enough or effectively enough?
I would say
I mean,
so.
it seems like a tool that exists in the environment, that maybe just a bit of understanding of what your policies are and being a little more prescriptive in how you control things might be.
There's a level of complexity
Right.
there, right? I feel like if everyone had the mindset of, oh, I'm going to leverage GPO to protect my organization, we wouldn't have as many compromises. I'm not throwing customers or organizations that have been compromised.
No, of course not.
Right? Like there's the threat actors are getting better. They're having more novel techniques, which means as defenders, we need to go in and make these prescriptions of, hey, go into your GPO and do this, or you need to enable these kind of rules in your EDR. The malware is easier to use for the threat actor, but it's easier to compromise systems. There's more zero-day exploits, right? But at the same time, I think there's what I call the 3 A's in cybersecurity orgs, and that's apathy, apprehension, and acquiescence. So you have this apprehension to make these changes, right? You don't want to take down the system. You don't want to make those patches, right? That could take down the business. You have a bit of apathy in that, hey, we haven't been compromised yet. Maybe we're already doing the right things. When we see a good example is when we see a DMZ compromise, usually you're thinking 0 day. You're thinking, I'm running the latest version. I got popped by 0 day. No, 9 times out of 10, you go in, oh, you're running a version that's a year behind. right? It happens to have been a 0-day, but it impacts, many versions back. And I think that acquiescence piece is really, everyone thinks they're going to get popped, and what's the worst that can happen if you get popped if you have cyber insurance? And I think the problem with that line of thinking is that once you've been compromised, threat actors now have all this information, right? They have how your usernames are like. They have all the IP addresses of your VPN, your internal, domain. They have hashes. They have usernames. They have file structures. They now can tell other threat actors, hey, I easily got into these guys. They might make changes, but I bet you these usernames still exist, or they still allow, this kind of policy.
Oh, they'd never share that information.
So this level of complexity, what you're describing, it really requires some serious size teams to think all of this over. And of course, that's the role of the vendors, that the role of the cybersecurity professionals and the tools that are used to make things a little bit more approachable. So can you show us, give us some good news of maybe case studies where successfully this could have been mitigated?
Yeah, I think we've worked with a number of customers that get compromised, right? Our team provides, my team, we provide 10 hours of IR to each of our MDR customers. And that gives us a lot of time to provide guidance and recommendations. And I think a really good example is a customer we had that are repeatedly targeted by the same threat actor. In this case, Black Bass, the known ransomware gang. In this case, they've been a little inactive the last couple of weeks, almost a month now. But some of the tips we've provided to them have actually made the threat actor pivot multiple times. One of the first examples, when we first saw them get compromised through the Microsoft Teams fake IT support attack, we told them, hey, you need to do a whitelisting approach and you need to remove Quick Assist. So they took that action, and the threat actor realized they were no longer able to come in that way and started doing phone calls. So that's showing that we're working around the threat actor. We're making changes that makes the threat actors' lives more difficult. In this case, that first incident also taught us some of the actions the threat actor was doing to do a DLL sideloading to execute their malware. In this case, from seeing that incident, we were able to create custom rules within the EDR. And bam, the next incident, we saw that. So the threat actor, yes, they were able to call up a user, get the user to download a separate tool. But now we saw the alarms trigger for a downstream activity. So I think it's not specific to LevelBlue. Like the cyber vendors in general are getting better because we're seeing such an uptick in activity. I think the problem is there's still so much to be done on the customer side. But in terms of detections and the things that we can do as a vendor, we're definitely trying to be one step ahead. I don't know if that quite answers your question, Marco. It's a bit of good news for us that we can, see progression in defense, but there's still a lot to be done.
Yeah, just the idea to know that there are the tools available, and then it's a matter of get this tool or execute what you've been told to do, even as a consulting level. And that's a good example of, hey, do this and do that, and all of a sudden you're mitigating somehow that.
Yeah, well, I think this is an important part of the conversation, is that most organizations can't scale that task or that activity or whatever on their own. And they need help from the likes of LevelBlue that have a lab team and a SOC team and a detection team and research teams that kind of analyze all this stuff to map out all these different paths, right? And there's going to be some commonality across the paths. There are going to be some unique paths taken, unique tools used, and things like that. But for your team, Ken, to come together and provide this information to organizations, I think is super helpful, because that does scale, right? Do it once and help many. It's an important piece.
Yep, and we're trying to, and that's why we have the report, we have LevelBlue blog posts, we talk about what we're seeing and how to take the steps. We also have a customer engagement team. So for our MGR customers, as we have these findings, it's communicated to all the customers. So just because we helped one customer in this incident doesn't mean there isn't lessons learned that could be implemented for customers across our fleet and for those who come to our website and read our blogs. And we're trying to make the cyberspace a better and safer spot, and that's what LevelBlue is trying to do.
Absolutely. What clearly you didn't stop collecting and monitoring, and Marco alluded to you're working on a new one for 2025. Obviously not a complete set for 2025 yet, but initial view of what you're seeing, is it still in line with 2024, or any big things stand out to you?
Yeah, I would say it basically aligns. We're still seeing phishing. We had, I think, 7 business email compromise attacks this past week. We had 4 malware attacks and 2 ransomware attacks. So the data aligns. I think we want to be more forward thinking with the 2025 H1 report. We want to make sure we hit on some of the future trends that we might see. I think there's definitely going to be a deeper discussion on some of the malware we're seeing and how to protect against those. Our labs team is working hard to track the threat actor infrastructure for the phishing kits and the malware we're seeing. And yeah, I see it being more the same, but this being a second iteration, we now have a better idea of how to frame kind of the ideas and the data we're seeing, how to better convey it, and more importantly, make the right recommendations for customers, regardless of the breadth and size of their teams. There's going to be recommendations that even mom and pop with one IT guy can make to better secure their environment.
Yeah, because you guys have the trend report, but also you have the futures report, and that's going to come up soon, right? April.
Yep, exactly.
28th.
April 28th at RSA.
Yeah.
So very exciting time. Please, definitely, it's going to be on levelblue.com. And speaking of RSA, actually, our labs team is actually going to have a very exciting presentation on the usage of residential proxies by threat actors. So look forward to seeing that.
That sounds fun. If you're a nerd like me, or a defender practitioner. Well, Ken, it's been great chatting with you. Is there anything else that we want to highlight? I guess the thing that always strikes me is ransomware is still a thing, and I don't know how many years now we've been battling this. Do you see that are we able to get ahead of it at some point? What do you think?
I think, speaking as a practitioner, as long as there's going to be vulnerabilities and as long as there's going to be money to be made through the ransomware attacks, until we have quantum computers breaking encryption, there's always going to be ransomware. There's always going to be threat actors. It's just about how well you can defend, detect, and prevent. So,
and you know what? There's also always going to be humans and social engineering. And
sure hope so.
I mean, we changed it,
but the humans anyway.
Yeah, well, we changed the name. We bring it to the digital world, but these are things that ransom that existed before we call it ransomware. It's kind of, I don't want to be negative, but it is kind of part of how our society is made, and it's just replicated and amplified probably. Yep. Through the digital world and the fact that we're all connected and the level of complexity, and you can just go and knocking door to door and trick someone. You just do it in a mass scale.
Yep.
And I think, I would love to see one of your next reporters say, "Hey, it got not trending up anymore," but I don't know, man.
I'm not sure I'll ever end up writing that as a sentence, but do look forward to our next trend report. We're aiming for August timeframe. We're trying to do these bi-yearly. But Marco, you'll be the first person I reach out to if, hey, ransomware is down 50%.
Let me know. But you know what? The other thing is, as this is trending up, and it's not probably going to end, there's also true that company like LevelBlue are always going to be fighting the good fight. and they're always going to do the best and do research and look at the past, the present, the future, and try to mitigate all of this. And that's honestly, if that's all we can do, I think it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, well, it's super important. Marco, you and I share, I don't know if you saw, but we share a friend that wasn't directly impacted, but dialysis machines were compromised for ransomware.
Yep.
That is pretty close to home to physical life, right? So,
pretty scary.
And a friend as well. So this is important stuff, and I'm thrilled that Ken and you and the team are working hard at finding a way to mitigate this stuff, even if we can't prevent it from happening. There'll always be those people out there, but if we can arm the organizations with information and knowledge and tools and a bit of support from your team as well, I think we're in better shape. So
yeah. So little memo here in the notes, there will be link to get to the report that we just discussed, and then of course stay tuned for the future report to be released on April 28th, and also stay tuned for the next trend report, which will be released around, we don't know yet exactly the date, but around August time. August. You know, because you know everything. Well, Ken, that was great. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic chats. Yep, appreciate it. And everybody listening and watching, thanks for joining us for this brand story here on ITSP Magazine with the LevelBlue team, I should say. And of course, please do subscribe and share with your friends and co-workers and colleagues and others in the industry. Help us all get ahead of this trend that's not stopping, it seems. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ken. This is a special announcement. We are heading to RSA Conference in San Francisco for our 11th years of coverage, April 28, May 1st.
And as always, we're bringing you keynotes, conversations with organizers, speakers, industry leaders, plus the latest insights from the world of cybersecurity.
And we'll reconnect with old friends, meet new ones, and of course, we want you and your company to join us.
We have a few spots left for full sponsorship and our on-location briefings. You can book yours now at itspmagazine.com/RSAC.
We're going.
And you're coming with us.